This is lecture 39. I want to talk about the life of Nevin Scrimshaw, and the subtitle of this lecture is The Power of Human Ingenuity to Improve Our Standard of Living. Here's a picture of Nevin as I knew him as an older man. He died recently, but he was always smiling. Got to have several dinners with him. Very interesting man who was active and alert and a great researcher to the end of his career. The New York Times had a touching obituary about him that just came out a couple of days ago, and let me quote it. Dr. Nevin Scrimshaw, a nutritionist who improved the health of millions of children in developing countries by creating low-cost vegetable-based foods for weaning infants, died in New Hampshire. He was 95. At the heart of his contribution, or one of his contributions, to help protein-starved children in Central Africa, and millions of them, Dr. Scrimshaw created a gruel made of corn, sorghum, I don't even know what that is, and cottonseed flour that was nutritionally equivalent to milk. In India, he adapted the same principle to peanut flour and wheat. He then brought both products to market where they sold for only pennies. So notice this human ingenuity here. He noticed a scarcity that in these poor countries, children were getting off to a horrible life start because apparently milk wasn't cheap. And we know from dynamic complementarity models of Heckman that if a child gets off to a slow start health-wise, that child is not going to develop his or her full potential. And so coming up with a substitute for milk, which had the nutritional equivalence of milk, is crucially important. And then rather than making $1 billion off this, it was sold only for pennies. So he gave the consumer surplus back to these individuals. There wasn't price gouging here. He didn't price this at the market price of milk. So implicitly, this was a transfer. After he came up with this, after he created his gruel, it was distributed widely to the people as a close milk substitute that was much cheaper than what milk must have been charging, or what producers must have been charging for milk at the same time. And this is how you improve livelihoods and living standards through ingenuity and effort. So my key slide here is that this is small ball ingenuity. I want to make a metaphor. Mark Zuckerberg is to Facebook, as Nevin Scrimshaw is to this gruel, and as a tribute to the rock band Cream. I'm calling it Strange Gruel rather than Strange Brew, but that's just my bad joke. I view Nevin Scrimshaw as great a man as Mark Zuckerberg, of creating through ingenuity something that really shaped the world. And so one of the big themes in modern economics is endogenous technological change and induced innovation, that necessity is the mother of invention. Human ingenuity effectively increasing our milk supply in the case of what Nevin Scrimshaw achieved. When I think to many of the ecologists and environmentalists who I speak to on a regular basis, there's often a fair bit of doom and gloom in this community. And I want to end this lecture with a couple of controversial thoughts. In the face, economists, while we're called the dismal science, there's a lot of optimism to economics because of our belief and continuing to find empirical evidence in support of induced innovation and endogenous technological change, whether it's coming up with functioning robots if workers become expensive, or coming up with a milk substitute when milk is expensive. We see again and again the collective ability to come up with innovations that allow us to economize on, or allow us to augment our supply of scarce resources. So why doesn't this also hold with natural capital? A couple of explanations for that. One is if we become technological optimists, that we can figure our way out of any jam, we may be setting ourselves up to fail. We might might engage in a mistake of if there's species extinction, we convince ourselves, like Jurassic Park, that we can bring these creatures back to life. Ecologists could be right. Embrace this sort of awe of Mother Nature, that we're not as smart as we think we are, that we can't figure our way out of every jam, even though in the past we've made great progress with necessity being the mother of invention. I also wonder, with some of the environmentalists I've met, and this is the bottom bullet point, that sort of Western European sense, they want the fat American to have to tighten his belt, and that it's a dangerous precedent. If we think we can always come up with a way to augment our supply, so I'm thinking of the peak oil guys, there's a group who almost wants us to have our day of reckoning, that this would almost be cosmic justice for making certain groups in society pay for their sins, and that it would be almost too convenient if our scientists can always come up with a substitute, that there never would be a day of reckoning. And so this is almost a moral point of how we live our lives. If we view the earth as infinite, then there are not checks on our behavior, and we become the sort of fat American. That brings me to my final point. Like most economists, I'm an optimist about the standard of living debates. If we had a time machine, I don't think many people would get in it and be willing to pay to live their lives in the past. That as we debate with rising greenhouse gas emissions, the threat of bioterrorism, ongoing war in the world, middle-class insecurity, would you prefer to live your life in the past? Or does life continue to get better, and for all demographic groups? And so I think I'm an optimist that people like Nevin Scrimshaw and their ideas, this continual discovery of new ideas, even when it's just making gruel, but crucial for saving millions, that this, with 7 billion people and this ingenuity mechanism, this is how the standard of living continues to improve.